You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
Hey guys, welcome back. You're listening to the second part of last week's episode. Let's jump back in.
So let me ask you, I could imagine someone saying, well, yes, you don't want to get all your worth from money, but at the same time, that drove you to be successful and caused you to pick up the book. And, Express Home Buyers has been this massive investing success. And I can imagine someone, particularly in the real estate investing space, which is, I think, you would probably agree, maybe not, let me know, but is a space that is predominated by extremely ambitious people, right? There's people who are self-starters, self-motivated, go out there. There's a real ethic of working hard and taking the chance and all this stuff, right? Which is good, I think, in general. But I could see people saying, well, if I let go of, let's just say I have the same belief, like my self-worth is rooted in money. If I let go of that, do I then end up losing what gives me an advantage in my life, right? Do I end up losing a part of what's made me me? What would you say to someone like that who maybe doesn't want to or feels anxiety about giving up that part of them because, well, what if that makes them less successful or less driven? Whatever adjective you'd like to use.
Man, you asked some amazing questions. I feel like we should turn this into like a YouTube series because fantastic question on so many levels. Your question is, well, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing that drove you? Yes, it is a good thing, but just with most things in life, right? There's a positive and there's a negative. So yes, it drove me to make millions of dollars. And I believe that if you look at most high-performing athletes, most high-performing CEOs, I think it's the same exact reason why they're high performers, because they're trying to prove something. You look at Tom Brady. Most people think that Tom Brady is the happiest guy in the world. His marriage just failed. And after the last Super Bowl, he had spent, I don't know how much time, probably not much time, but a lot of money on a reel that within 2 minutes of the Super Bowl being done was proving all his naysayers wrong. If someone really loves himself and has a lot of self-compassion and doesn't need to prove themselves, they're never going to make a video. So I think it drives a lot of people. So it drove me to make millions of dollars, but it also drove me to make 5 business mistakes that cost me $9 million trying to catch my worth. And maybe you can look at me and say, well, you're just not as smart as the next guy. And that might be the case because I made some pretty stupid mistakes. But to your question about losing your drive, I have a client right now. It's one of the few of my clients who's struggling, and he's been extremely successful financially at a young age. And he thinks that if he gives up this, if he goes to the self-love, it's going to be like, well, how am I going to drive myself? Here's what I'm here to tell you. When I have shifted my goal of trying to make a lot of money, or the reason I try to make a lot of money to prove myself, to I want to impact people in my lives and on this planet, my business is now doing as good as ever, pretty much, right? I work 3 hours a week. I'm coaching now a lot of people. I'm changing lives inside my company. I'm looking at how we can impact the sellers. So I believe that the people who are chasing the money, you'll never find happiness, because nothing outside of your self will either bring you joy or sadness. It can't. It's all you. Everything you ever needed to be happy is within yourself. So I think if you make that shift from trying to prove your worth to try to prove an impact, but you can't do that, you can't find your purpose until you have this internal connection, because you're just running around in a fight or flight state all the time. So long-winded way of saying, I believe that the financial success in this coaching company, it's the first company I've started about that I didn't have money in mind. But I bet you if we have this conversation in 5 years, I'm going to be more financially successful because I'm not concerned about the money. All I want to do is change as many people's lives as I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, so that brings up a really interesting point. I am very, very interested in people who are operating what I would consider highly purpose-driven businesses, right? Purpose-driven, mission-driven, whatever you want to call it. And it strikes me that there's a bit of a a mirroring there, right? You had this moment where you decided to go all in on express home buyers, right? And you had the newborn on the way, and you had to kind of work through that process. And it strikes me that there's a bit of a sort of a reflection there in your decision to really move into coaching from express home buyers. Now, like you said, you're still working at express home buyers. It's still a great company today, but was it hard to shift your focus from investing to coaching, right? Because investing was the proven thing, right? Really doing well. I imagine there's a lot of validation there. Obviously, there's money there. There's a lot of success and everything that comes with that. And then you've got to shift over to this thing that is new and necessarily unproven and maybe different. Was that a hard decision to make? Was it easy to make? Like, what was that like?
It was it might have been the easiest decision I've ever made in my life, honestly. Everything around this has been the easiest decision I make. I've read 40 books in the last 20 months. I've spent, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 hours studying. I can't get enough of this. Again, because I have found my purpose in life, and I only could find my purpose through life from getting reconnected to myself. So no, it's been an amazing journey. I can assure people, some people in the first couple months were like, don't go too all in, because this is what happens a lot when people go through this. They want to help other people, but then they just kind of burn out on the helping other people, and they just live their life happily ever after. And I can tell everyone, I assure you, I will be doing this work till the day that I leave this beautiful planet, because it is just so rewarding to me on so many levels.
I mean, I love that, man. I think there is a thing that happens when you have a really deep passion for what you do that, like you said, it's sort of almost, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense. And you really tell, like, it comes off you in waves, right? How happy you are and excited you are. So let's apply this a little bit. So the audience for this podcast, right, it's real estate investors. We're in a weird market, right? We're in a weird market right now. We've had many years of what I would consider abnormal times. I don't know if there's ever going to be any non-abnormal times anymore, but we had a couple of years of like pretty abnormal times. We're heading into what feels like a market correction. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, right? So let me ask you, are you viewing this period we're heading into or dealing with it in the context of express home buyers differently today than you would have as the Brad Chandler from 10 years ago, before you had this kind of transformation, right? Like, if you can compare and contrast in your head how that Brad would have handled this versus how this Brad is handling this, what are the differences you see there, if any?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would have been freaking out because I would have been scared of losing money, because my happiness and my worth was tied to the money. And now I live my life that everything happens to us for a reason, everything. And it's happening for us, right? And it's always to teach us some type of lesson. So I'm in a good position financially. And could things change drastically? Yeah, they could. I think things are going to get pretty hairy out there the next 6 months. I think interest rates are not going to go back down, but I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just a guess. And right. I've been saying for 6 months that the volume is going to go way down, and it's certainly dropped off a cliff. I mean, title companies, I don't know how they're surviving. I don't know how lenders are surviving, loan officers. I mean, they're laying off. Like, there's massive layoffs going on now. Yeah. But I think that if you take a situation like this and you freak out about it, you go into that fight or flight mode. Your creativity shuts down. You can't see things. I look at everything that happens in my life now as nothing bad ever happens to me, because how do you know at the time that it's bad? So my second wife, like, literally up and walked out on me in the middle of COVID. And I was destroyed, right? 45 days of just like misery, like, this is the worst thing ever. And I look back and it was like a huge blessing for me. It just was. So you just can't see anything as bad in your life. It's always an opportunity to learn and to grow. So, and the more that you can see that, can just imagine living a life where nothing bad happens to you. That's pretty much how I live my life. If I get in a car accident, I'm like, well, this was meant to be. If I get rained out, it was meant to be. Just let the universe do its thing, because we can't control interest rates. We can't control how many phone calls we make a day. We can control the people that we attract. My team is the best team we've ever had in 20 years. I've had people hear me on podcasts who are like, I need to come work with this guy. And then I end up working with him and helping him change his life because of his past trauma. So I've attracted a different type of person. We've got this amazing company that everyone when they are now, we love. They're all awesome.
I was actually going to ask about this, which is how this filters through to how you think about team building and hiring, right? Because you mentioned you work in express home buyers 3 hours a week. For people who don't know, the company I find that extremely impressive. My company is much smaller than yours. And I have been spending really the whole last year rebuilding my team, rebuilding my processes. And I'm still in that kind of process, right? Slowly getting out of it. But I've had to learn a lot about picking the right people and understanding what makes someone the right person for a role. Right. So I'm really curious how you think about that process now. Like if you are building a team for express home buyers, or you start building a team around your coaching business, right? How do you approach that with this knowledge you have now about psychology and, what people bring to their relationships, which of course an employee-employer relationship it's in a relationship. Like, how do you view that process differently or go about it differently?
I mean, look, like I told you I'm a completely different human being in every area of my life, right? Other than maybe the fitness, like I've always been into fitness, but even that's gotten better. Yeah, so I can't not talk about my transformation. I can't not talk about things. I read people now. A lot of people say I create safety. I think I didn't have a lot of safety growing up as a child, so that's kind of my superpower. People really open up to me. I mean, people have said to me on countless occasions over the last 20 months, I've never told anyone that before. So when I'm in these interviews, which we haven't hired in a while and I haven't been interviewed, but if you go back a couple of months, we interviewed a bunch of people and hired a bunch of people. Like the people leave the interview being like, I can't believe this interview I had. One of our employees just moved out to LA, and when I was out there getting trained in the hypnotherapy, I brought him and his girlfriend to dinner, and he's just like, man, I still can't believe I'm having these conversations with my boss's boss, like really intimate conversations about their life. And I've helped him, see things in his life. So how do I approach it? Just from a point of like love, and I'm not judging them. And, we brought on several people that were recovering alcoholics. I don't know if I would have had a problem with that before. Probably not, but I just see it in a whole nother light. Like I see myself in them. I was an alcoholic. Did I drink too much at times? Did I use alcohol and weed to make myself feel better because of my shortcomings? Absolutely. So yeah, I just, everything changes. Like it's so hard when you are fighting for your worthiness to have a good relationship with yourself, with a spouse, with a business partner, with a employee. My business partner and I have been together for 19 years. I mean, we don't do a lot of stuff outside just because we have busy families, but I consider him like one of my best friends in the world. And Tom Kroll, who you probably know, he's like, don't ever get in a partnership. He's like, he wants to write a book on how partnerships fail. And I'm like, I've been blessed. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't always that way. For the most part, it was. I tried to buy him out at one point in time, all around my unworthiness too. And so anyway, just everything changes when you can find that freedom and self-love.
Want to find motivated seller leads online, but don't know where to start? Download our free Motivated Seller Keyword Report today. AdWords nerds have spent over $5 million this year researching the most profitable keywords for finding motivated seller leads. And you can grab these exact keywords when you download our report at www.adwordsnerds.com/keywords.
So here's where we transition officially to the Dan Ask the Selfish Question thing, because here is my question about what you just said, because I do identify with the idea of, I don't know, maybe intimate is sort of the wrong word that I'm looking for, but this deeply connective type of relationship, right? That maybe people aren't used to having in the workplace, right? And I've always really believed in that. And I think what a problem that I ran into was that I wanted that thing. I wanted that kind of relationship so badly that I would almost compulsively overlook problems with the people that I hired. Right. And so those problems sort of snowballed until I realized that, well, what started as a little problem over here with this one particular person has become sort of a cultural issue now. And it sort of got to the point where I had to let people go that I'd worked with for years and years and years and felt like I had a really deep relationship with, right? It was very painful at the time. It was very difficult, but I also viewed it as a very educational experience, right? Like I was like, okay, I came out of that as a far more mature human being, right? So my question to you is, how do you sort of managed to build those relationships with people where, like you said, you can have these deeply connective moments. You can have those great conversations. You can see people for who they really are, but also maintain some of the objectivity that you need as an entrepreneur so that you can view people through the lens of how their performance affects the company and not necessarily, see them and their kids and their entire family behind them. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, I think it just becomes so many people struggle with unworthiness. I'm not enough. The three main things that people have, and some people have all three of them. If you have any suffering in your life, it's because you don't feel enough. You feel you don't belong, and therefore you can't connect, or you have the feeling that you can't get what you ever want and you never will get it. So many people have one or a combination of those that it's really hard to build a deep connection anywhere. So I think what you're asking is, how do you build a deep connection, but yet still keep them making a certain number of calls? And frankly, it's like easy because there's no hidden agenda now. It's, look, we're trying to make an impact on the most people. You've got to do your job. If you don't do your job, maybe there's not a place for you here. It's said with love, like, dude, I love you and I'll still continue to help you through your life, but we're trying to do something here. We're trying to accomplish something here, and you can either be with us or you can be without us. So honestly, it makes everything easier. When you can be, most people cannot be their authentic self. And that's why we have a drinking problem and, marijuana problem, just all these issues. We're always trying to mask who we really are. When you can speak from your heart, and when someone says something that upsets you and you can say, hey, what you just said upset me, it's not your fault, because if I'm upset at something internal in me, and you can have these conversations with people, that's how you build deep connection. And when you have deep connection, people generally will work harder and smarter for you.
So someone's listening to this and they're interested. It sounds really exciting and kind of interesting, but they also don't really know what they think about it, right? Because I think that's fair. If somebody hasn't had this experience, maybe they don't know necessarily what to think about it. What's something that they could look for in their lives to kind of open a door into this part of themselves? Does that make sense? Like, you mentioned, like, these three beliefs of, I'm not enough, I can't get what I want, I don't belong. And in my head, I was like, okay, check. Like, I'm just mentally checking them off, right? So what are some things that people can look for in their lives as maybe an indicator that they should dig a little bit deeper in that part of their lives, or maybe spend some time self-examining?
Dude, like, just another phenomenal question. And I'm trying to do 1,000 things at once, building this company. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to create a self-love, self-compassion test, and it's going to explain this very same thing. If you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, hey, Brad, do you love yourself and do you have self-love? Or you're happy, sorry. Are you happy and do you have self-love? I'd be like, hell yeah, I love myself. I don't care what other people think. But it wasn't true. And I didn't know that. So all these people are probably like in the same boat. Like, well, I have a lot of self-love, so I can stop watching now. It's the similar thing when you say to someone, are you an alcoholic? And they're like, well, I'm not really. And you start asking them questions about your life. So forget the alcoholism. Just look at yourself as, what have your relationships been like in your life? Your intimate relationships. Have they been rocky? Has it been one person after the next? You're like, what's wrong with this person? What's wrong with this person? What's wrong with this person? I keep finding the wrong people. Well, you're attracting the wrong people. Do you drive around in a triggered state? Are you honking at people? Are you yelling at people? Are you flipping them off? Do you find yourself judging other people all the time? Do you find yourself judging yourself? When you make a mistake, how do you talk to yourself? Do you say, Dan, you effing idiot, like, how could you make that mistake again? Or do you say, you know what, probably shouldn't have done that, but it's okay, we're humans, we go on? Do you drink too much? Do you eat too much? Do you work 80 hours a week? Is your wife or your husband saying, why do you work so much? The kids miss you. How is a great barometer? Goes back to the kids. I just did a video on this a couple of days. How do you know if you have a happy marriage? 2 ways. Ask the parents or test the kids' cortisol levels. What's cortisol? It's what your body produces when you're in stress. So do you have a good relationship with your children? And a good relationship doesn't mean that you're doing everything for them, because I was doing everything for my kids, but yet I was still hurting them. So do your kids have behavioral problems? Do they have anxiety? Do they have ADD? Do they have drug problems? Do they drink? Whatever it is, look to yourself, because your kids weren't born with those issues, and nor were you. And that's the beautiful thing. We learned all these. We were only born with the fear of falling down and loud noises. Everything else we've learned. If you learned it, you can unlearn it. So if you're listening and you have any of those things, I can promise you that means you have one of the three things Dan said, repeated. I'm not enough. I don't belong, and therefore I can't connect, and I can't get what I want. Those are three things that Marissa Peer, one of my great mentors, taught me. If you have any of those signs, I promise you that there are areas of your life, and probably every single area of your life, that's being affected in some way, shape, or form. And you're like, well, I don't know why. Why do I come home every night and have to drink 2 glasses of wine to wind down? Why, when I go to events, can I not walk in and feel comfortable talking to people? Why do I have to go to the bar and slam like 2 tequila shots and chug a beer before I go talk to someone? All of those are signs like something isn't right. It's your body's way of telling you, just like when you get a headache or a fever, your body's amazing. Your brain's amazing. When you have pain, it's your internal alarm system. When you feel something internal that doesn't feel right, it's a sign that something is not right inside yourself.
Oh man. So I just want to keep talking about this, but I literally can't because I have to manage the time. So I'm so curious, what is next in your head, right? For this project that you have, that you started. It seems like just over the last 5 years, it's changed quite a bit, right, in focus. So when you look out at the next 5 years, what do you want to achieve? Like what do you view as next for Brad Chandler and bradchandler.com? Obviously, we mentioned the website, but what's next for you?
I mean, it's just about impact. It's how do I, in the next 5 years, forget the 5 years, I hope I'm about to turn 50 next year. And I want to live to be, I used to say 100, but now with the Tony Robbins Life Force book that came out on longevity, I think I can push that to 110. So for the next 60 years, what is the most amount of people that I can help? Can I change 5 million people's lives? I'm trying everything I can to how can I create a product or a system that can help millions of people, because I want to change the world. Not to say, hey, Brad Chandler changed the world. All I want to do is when I die, say I did, when I left this earth, it was way better than when I got here. And I can take a little bit of credit for it.
Man, I love that so much. And like I said, I think it really comes across the passion, the intensity you bring to your work. So we mentioned the website, which is bradchandler.com. And I know for a fact that if anybody's listening to this and you're curious what Brad is doing, you can go to bradchandler.com/contact to get all his contact information. You can reach out to him directly. I know you do a lot of social media. You're doing a daily video for a while too. So if people want to learn more about you or follow you, there's bradchandler.com. Where else should they look you up?
So if they go to bradchandler.com/contact, all of my social media platforms are there. Whatever one you're on, I'm on. My contact information, my website, a little video about my story. It's like a 3.5 minute video that kind of tells you about my story. That would be the best place.
All right. Awesome.
And look, if you're suffering in any way, shape, or form, all of those things, the drinking too much, the eating too much, the anxiety, the depression, you can't sleep. By the way, we have a huge problem in this world, in the United States more than ever, with sleep. As my mentor says, Marissa, sleep issues are a sign of a troubled mind. You heard the saying, sleep like a baby. You were born to sleep really well. If you're not sleeping now, it's 99% sure you've got something going on with your mind, right? Some stress. So all I'm here to tell you is, if you've tried everything, you haven't tried everything. If you're suffering, you don't have to suffer. There is a proven way out. Whether I help you or not, it doesn't matter, but get help. And if you need me to either help you or find someone to help you, I am here to help.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such an important message, and maybe even more important in real estate investing, which I think is not an industry like a lot of industries, but maybe not an industry where we're necessarily used to talking about our feelings or talking about our personal difficulties. I think surprisingly, a lot of investors are very open about the struggles that they face if you ask, but it's not something that people necessarily share all the time. So I think that's a really powerful message. Like you said, bradchandler.com/contact. Brad, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This was a real treat for me. I just really appreciate you coming on.
That was awesome. And your questions are unbelievable. And yeah, let's do it again in 6 months or something.
That is it. That's it for our interview this week. Again, I hope you got a ton out of my conversation with Brad. I did, and I'm really hoping the same was for you. Hey, by the way, AdWordsNerds.com is the place to go if you need an online marketing strategy for your market. We will help you put together one for free. If you want to use us to help us implement it, awesome. We would love that. But if you don't, you want to just go do it on your own, we encourage that. And in fact, we will hook you up with resources to help you do just that. AdWordsNerds.com is the place to go. Click on the thing that says strategy session and we will get you going again for free. As always, I appreciate you listening. I will see you next week. Cheers.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.